So the most commonly used machines in the forest today really are the basic chainsaw operators, and then the timber's normally extracted with a forwarder or a timber trailer. Moving up from that, and the majority of the work these days is done with a purpose-built harvester such as this one, and again followed up with a purpose-built forwarder. And that's the bread and butter of timber harvesting really in the UK as it stands today. These machines can cut hardwood and softwood timber, and they will operate throughout the year in hours of darkness and through the day. So really, bits of high-tech equipment, purpose-built, will deliver a good, efficient job once some of the subtleties of the right machine size and wheel configuration and that are suited to the work site that you're going to be working on. So at some point in your worksite planning, you'll get to an agreement with the landowner and the agent as to what sort of machinery you need to undertake the work in your woods. And that will depend on the volume of the timber you're going to extract from the woodland, the style of the works, the terrain that you're going to be working on, and the size of the trees that you're cutting. And the contractor will help choose and form a decision on that, so that you get the best machine suited to the site. That's really quite important because it makes sure that the work sites are efficient, that the impact on the site is least damaging, and that the overall operation is a sort of much better success. The chainsaw operations, obviously the chainsaw is sort of the well-known way of cutting a tree down, but in modern forestry it's used as least as possible for safety reasons, to protect the operator, and it's much more efficient to use purpose-built machines to fell trees. But there's always a time and an application, the right place and the right time for a chainsaw operation to be necessary. Appropriate planning needs to take place so that the safety of the operator is paramount, and this might be winching trees over alongside power lines when an outage is in place, or from a tree over a fence line or a building where it's not possible to do it in mechanised means. Often chainsaw operators might be supported with a winch tractor, and that can be used to pull the trees over and then perhaps extract those trees from a tight corner of the woodland. But it's relatively slow and labour intensive sort of method to use. So this is one of the harvesters we've got on the fleet. This is a pretty standard machine in the forest industry today, used for the majority of the felling works. Once the timber has been felled and extracted to roadside and dispatched from the woodland to the various markets, the owner will soon want to turn their minds to getting the replanting work undertaken. Obviously that's already decided as to what's going to be planted in the woodland design plan or in the felling licence, but it's important then to be working with the contractor or the subsequent contractors to ensure that the ground preparation work's done, and what sort of machinery is used to do that. How the site is left from the harvesting work is quite important to the ground prep, and then the machines that follow on from ground preparation would normally be a machine such as a mulcher, which could be tractor based or a purpose built one, or an excavator to do a rake and burn or a raking operation of some kind, with the aim of removing some of the harvesting debris, clearing some of the leftover vegetation, and making sure you've got suitable places for the planting to be taken on, so that the new plants can get a really good start in life. So once the timber harvesting's been completed, the landowner and the agent will want to continue with their plans for the replanting work, and there'll be a number of machines that they might choose from to get that ground preparation done. There'll be a scarifier, which is normally a machine with two large cogs on the back of it, two large wheels with teeth, and they turn around as the machine drives through the forest, and that just breaks the initial structure, sort of the turf of the woodland soils, and provides a place for the trees to be planted. Another machine would be a mulcher, and that's more like a horticultural rotavator, but heavy duty, and that sort of breaks everything up into smaller pieces, including bits of leftover branch wood and bramble and bracken and that sort of thing. Or alternatively a rake and burn operation with an excavator, where using a tracked excavator you rake up all the debris and either mound it or perhaps have a fire and get rid of the debris. So again, you've got a clear site for the replanting works to take place. So also to prepare a site ready for planting, you might well use either a plough, which is similar to an agricultural plough to give you your lines for your trees, just to disturb the vegetation on the top of the soil and give you some mineral soil to plant the trees into, or the use of a mounder, which is normally an excavator-based machine, and that'll turn over a kind of a large turf, turn it up onto itself so the soil is facing up and the new trees are planted into the top of the mound. That just again gives those trees a little bit of opportunity. It can lift them above the water table a little bit to aid drainage and give a weed-free planting site. And that's done a mound for each tree across the site, so perhaps 2,500 plants to the hectare, something like that. Some sites will be less straightforward than this one. This is a nice flat site with pretty straightforward trees, but yeah, there will be places where it's much more tricky to get operations undertaken, and that's when the contractor, and perhaps in partnership with the agent, will talk about more specialist equipment that would be needed. It might be extremely steep ground where a skyline is required. A skyline is like a cable car system that's used for extracting timber down steep hills and away from valleys, or particularly wet ground that's not suitable for wheeled vehicles. It might be that there's a need for much lighter touch, and something like horse logging might be something that someone would consider. There are a number of different pieces of equipment that can be attached to the back of a tractor for a sort of a smaller scale, lighter touch operation. But ultimately, one way or another with forest operations, you're going to be taking a sort of a relatively large machine, whether an agricultural type tractor or a purpose-built machine, into the woods. There'll be a bit of mud, there'll be a bit of disturbance to the fauna of the forest floor, but it's a short-term interruption for a much longer-term gain. Another go-to machine is a grapple saw, which is a fixed head on an excavator base, a 360 excavator base, and it can work aerially and grab hold of a tree, cut it and take it apart in sections. A really useful tool for taking trees away from sides of roads or over buildings and yards where it's not possible to climb the tree, perhaps due to tree health issues or because of efficiency. It's much quicker to take the tree down by mechanical means than climbing it in a traditional rope and harness method. So with forest operations, there's always quite a lot of options to sort of choose from, a number of ways of perhaps achieving a similar thing, some subtleties between the two, or perhaps something that you've missed. So it's always worth talking to contractors, seeking advice, asking questions, and then that's a way of just ensuring that the way that you go about your planned works is probably the best for the woodland, and the best for the outcomes that you want to achieve in the safest possible way. To summarise all of this, really, the key to it is making sure you've got enough time to plan the operation, that the communication has been had between the landowner and the agent and the contractor, that you all know what's going to be achieved and how that's going to be done, what machinery you're going to bring to the site and when it's going to be brought to the site, for what purpose, and perhaps for how long the operation is going to take place, so that throughout the duration of the works, everyone's on the same track, everyone's expectations are the same. There'll always be unforeseen things that'll crop up along the way, but working in a good relationship, a positive relationship between those parties that have an interest in the operation, as well as any third-party stakeholders, will mean that a delivery of safe and effective operations is possible, meaning that the woodland management can proceed with ease.